Okay, I'm going to show you guys how to override the AHC system on a Lexus LX470. Those of you that are familiar, it will you have 3 height controls.
Waiting for connection.
Oops, sorry about that. So you have low, which brings the suspension to the lowest setting, and it's not recommended to drive in that setting because you have very little suspension left at that point. Although people would like that setting on a highway, on a smooth highway, save some gas mileage. There's also a high setting, which is good for off-roading, but Lexus also disables the high setting. As soon as you hit 19 miles per hour, you drop back to neutral. I'm sure there's reasons for that. And if you call Lexus and ask them if it would be okay to drive around in high, they'd probably say no. But I wanted the option to drive in high or low and not be, dictated by the speed of the vehicle. So I'll show you normal operation here. I'm going to put this in high. Okay, so we're in high. I'm not sure what the speed is for low, but if you put the vehicle in low and start driving, I think as soon as you hit like 5 miles per hour, it will go up to neutral. Alright, waiting for a gap here. Alright, so you're in high mode. And notice as soon as you hit 20 miles per hour at 19, AHC starts flashing and puts you back in neutral. Like I said, there's probably a reason for it. You're probably not supposed to drive in high, but I like to have the option. Okay, so we're back at being parked. Alright, so when I got the LX470, I really didn't want it. I wanted the Land Cruiser without the AHC, but this matched the mileage, year, and condition for me, so I bought it. I started researching how can you override the AHC, and there was a company called SLEE, S-L-E-E, that used to make an override switch. So I started looking to see if I could buy it. No one had it. I called SLEE. They no longer make it. It was a small module that had a switch and an LED on it. But when I followed their instructions step by step, I saw that they were splicing into just 2 wires into the AHC control module. After doing some further research, I came across a post. I can't remember who it was, so I can't give credit right now. But they identified the 2 wires as being speed signal sensors from the ABS from wheel left and right. So that's how the AHC gets the speed reading from those 2 wires. And if you look at the SLEE instructions, those are the 2 wires you got to splice into. And the SLEE override kit also had a power and a ground to power up the LED. I realized I don't need that. All I need to do is just, put a switch on those 2 wires to cut off the speed sensors to the AHC. So I did just that, and I installed a little switch here. In the on position, the wires are intact as they should be. When I put it in 0 or off, it's a double pole switch. Single throw, and that means it's 2 circuits get shut off or turned on at the same time. So wire 4 and 17 are now in a cut position, basically disconnected from the AHC. So let me put the truck back in high. Takes a minute, as you know. Okay, so we're in high. And then our switch is off, meaning that the speed sensors are off. Well, let's give this a test. Now, if you have one of these, you know that exactly 19 miles an hour, the height sensor is going to start, the AHC is going to start flashing and drop you back to neutral. Okay, we're at 20. We're at 30, 35, 40. As you can see, the vehicle's staying in high mode. And it will stay there until you flip that switch back on or manually switch the height. So if I reconnect the circuit by flipping that switch right now, as soon as I flip that switch, the vehicle goes back to neutral because the speed sensors are in play. So that's how this override switch works. And I posted on I Hate Mud, and I got a lot of questions. How to wire up the switch, which wires to cut, what kind of switch should I get. So I'm going to see if I could take things apart and show you how to do this. Okay, so the AHC unit is underneath the dash. You basically got to take that whole panel off. Then there's a metal plate you got to take off. You got to take the HVAC duct out to get to that connector. So first thing you got to do is this black molding here. Take it out, and all you have to do is just pull it towards you, and it just comes right off. Okay, in the back of it, there's a plug for the dimmer control. So disconnect that. Once you disconnect it, you can just remove that piece, set it aside. Then to remove the lower panel, there's, if you go here, there's one Phillips head screw. So remove that. And then you'll have to disconnect these linkage cables. It's pretty easy. Move it to the left, pull it through. Mine already disconnected. And to remove this panel, which is basically gonna have to just give it a nice tug. And then we'll disconnect from the clips. Sorry about the choppy video. Doing this myself with a cell phone. Alright, there's a microphone cable right there you'll need to disconnect. And disconnect all these plugs. Don't worry about how you disconnect them, they can only plug in back to its place. Okay, once you disconnect all the wires, the microphone wire just becomes free. Tuck it aside. Now I gotta remove this metal plate. These are all 10mm bolts. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let me do that, I'll be right back. Okay, once you take the 4 bolts out, this metal plate just comes right out. Also, you should probably disconnect the battery before doing any of this, just to be safe when you cut wires, you don't damage anything. Okay, this air duct, it's not screwed in, it just snaps in on this side and that side. It's kind of weird. I had a hard time with this the first time too. Okay, take the air duct out. There's a screw holding it in place right here. Okay, once you take that out, it's free to be pulled out. Remove the left side. Right side's a little tricky. Okay, and the whole thing comes right out. Now remember, Lexus does not recommend doing this, neither does Toyota. And I don't know if it damages your vehicle or not. It works fine for me. Alright, so if you look in there, the bottom connector is the AHC connector. So go ahead and disconnect that. Okay, let me untape my splice and I'll show you. Okay, so I already have my spliced in. It'll be a little difficult to explain, but you turn the plug around like this, with the connector on top, the snapping connector. Alright, so if you look from the left, 1, 2, 3, 4th one. Right underneath it is 17. So if you go to the back of the connector, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4th wire. It's that red one, red white. That's the one I cut. Also on the other side of this connector, right on the other side of 4 is 17. That's the orange yellow cable. I cut that one as well. So let's look at 17 first. Here's 17. It was intact like this, right? So I cut it and put extensions on it. Enough to reach the switch. So if you see, I have the green one, my green one, goes to the cable itself, and I just have a connector on it. So basically I extend both those wires where I cut them. So that's cable 17. And same thing goes for 4, the red wire. I cut it and I put extensions on it. Again, enough to reach the switch. And I didn't put connectors on here because the original harness, these wires are so thin, I don't have connectors small enough. So I did a real tight twist and put some solder on it, wrapped the electrical tape. Okay, so like I mentioned, the AHC gets 2 signals from the left speed sensor and right speed sensor. I don't know which one's which. But let's take cable 17 for instance, right? So we have a broken circuit now and 2 connectors. So the type of switch you want to get for this project is a double throw, it's a double pole, which is 2 circuits. It's going to be a 4-prong switch, and single throw, meaning there's just one toggle switch to turn both off and on. So if you look at this switch, and you forget these 2 exist just on this side, and you put one connector here, one here. In the on position, this is a closed circuit. So now you're closing the gap of the wires that you cut. Okay, in the off position, it disconnects these 2 wires. Okay, all that double pole means is that you have the same idea on the other side of the switch. This is a whole other switch. So you take your cables from wire 14 that you extended, and you connect those back to here. And this switch will do the same function for this side. On connects these 2 wires, off breaks the circuit. By having a double pole in the on position, these 2 are connected and these 2 are connected. You hit it off, it disconnects both circuits. Alright, so as you can see, this is just an extension to the wires that we cut in there. Okay, so I reconnected the 26-pin cable. I wrapped up the mic connection nice and tight. And you just route your cables right underneath the steering column, right to where your switch is going to be mounted. I left some slack on these. You could just tuck them in. Alright, so you got to reassemble. First, put the HVAC duct back in. I found that if you put the right side in first and twist in the left side. Okay, once you get the duct back in, don't forget there's that screw right here. And put your metal plate back in. Make sure you leave this on top of the plate, the microphone plug. Okay, so I got the metal plate back on, the 4 10mm bolts back on. Now the microphone cable should be sticking out of this hole. All these cables you got to reconnect to the all the switches, and make sure you pull this cable for the dimmer up above, tuck it like that before you put the panel back on. Okay, once everything's reconnected, just run your wires to that hole, leave them hanging, got the microphone hooked up, and then as you can see, you got those snapping connectors right there to snap the panel back in place. Once the panel's all snapped back in, you just have that one screw right there. So make sure you put that screw back in. Alright, screws back in, and these you could just go behind, tuck into the hole. This is actually the biggest pain in the ass of this whole job, is putting these back in and onto the latches. And all you got left is that top trim piece with the dim controller. So you left that cable on top, connect it back to that controller, and that just snaps back in. Okay, trim piece back in. So now you got these 4 wires. I know which ones are what because I already did this, but make sure you label your wires so you know where to go on the switch. Okay, I connected all the wires to my switch. One recommendation would be if you could find a round switch instead of a square one. Even though I like the look of the square one better, it looks more OEM. It's a real pain in the ass to get in this plastic thing. I had to cut it with a razor blade and drill holes in the 4 corners and use the knife. Instead I could have just used a drill bit. Let me tuck these in. So here's your finished product. It's a nice looking switch, simple operation, does the job. Just a disclaimer, I am not an electrician, not a mechanic. I'm sure Lexus would not recommend this hack or mod, but it does what I want it to. It gives you an option to be in high or low mode whenever you want to. Alright, enjoy.